if someone wants to dive and mosh for every band at a fest, fuck yeah, you're a hero. So I think we should petition to get Fubu Man to Scope Exposure 5-year anniversary. I'll start a GoFundMe. I got the first $20 on it.
Strife. Strife.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. We are blessed on this day to be welcomed by the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew Kline of STRIFE, BERTHOLD City, War Records, arguably maybe too many things, but, you know, he's one of those people that has his hands in many, many honeypots. Andrew, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, I've been giving a little bit of context as to why I'm bringing on specific guests for the podcast, and you know, we've got to connect through some work things, and I've gotten to hang out with you a little bit and just hear a little bit more about, you know, your story and what you're up to. And you know, the day of recording this is we announced the Scope 5-year, like I think it was like half an hour ago. I'm like sitting in my car posting, then I'm like ripping all the way to get here for this interview. So obviously we're going to be chatting about that. Your current band, BERTHOLD City, just put out a new record, When Words Are Not Enough, through War Records as well. So, you know, there's a lot of things to talk about. I want it to be chill. But yeah, I'm really excited for this interview.
Yeah, and I'm excited to be here, and congrats on the 5-year anniversary. You know, that's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. It was funny because I think I'm just bad at like not giving myself breathing room at times. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just drop this huge announcement and then I'll just jump right into this podcast and it will be totally fine. So I'm like, if anything, it's maybe good to have my phone, like not looking at my phone for the next hour and then checking it.
Yeah, you got people asking you questions.
Yeah, people be like, "Yo, this is crazy."
You know, right before I was posting, I was like, "Oh, are tickets available?" Because I wasn't sure. So, like, you know, I wanted to post that, and then I added it to our link tree so people could buy tickets right away, and you know, not have to search around the internet for them.
Tons of moving parts there with like, you know, and this will be something that maybe Jessa, because we have our own podcast series as well, where we can talk about the lineup and how it came to be. But it was like, I felt bad because I wasn't sending the poster out to everyone like with, you know, a day's notice, because we were like, oh, someone might be able to jump on now. And we're trying to do that. And then I'm like sending it first thing in the morning. But, you know, I think with most things in hardcore, it's like coming down to the 11th hour to make it happen. And yeah. So before we just get super off the rails with the music chats, it's a tradition here, Andrew, to do a bev check before we get into the episode. So tell me what you're going to be sipping on beverage-wise during the interview.
Classic filtered water.
Yeah. And I think you ran to the fridge as well and snagged some.
I did. I did. If you want the corporate sponsorship, I do have a key lime LaCroix as backup. If I'm pronouncing it right, I know there's a
LaCroix.
Yeah. I like LaCroix.
Yeah.
Key lime, it tastes like somebody dissolved lime Skittles into carbonated water. So if you're a Skittles fan and, you know, trying to lay off some sugar, this might be the drink for you. Yeah, I've been really into sparkling water for a while. And then I don't know, one day I just woke up and I'm like, you know what? I'm not into it anymore. I'm just going to go back to just drinking water. Like literally for years, all I drank was water, like no sodas, nothing. It's like water. And then I started getting into sparkling water. Now I'm back to just water.
Yeah. It like, I literally was at a show yesterday where people were like, where did your like beverage obsession come from? And honestly, like, cause for me, I grew up not drinking like soda or root beer or even like iced tea. Like I was only like, I I think the 3 beverages I would drink would be like water, milk, and like orange juice, and that was it. And it was just like more of like me not liking the like the fizziness, just like the syrupy nature. And then something happened where I think it was really through sparkling water where it's like, okay, I can get behind this. And the water, like just doing the LaCroix stuff just opened the world for it. And now I just bev
I think
aficionado.
too, like, you know, being a band and touring Europe, it's like you go to a restaurant and you get sparkling water. So you kind of get a taste to it. The first time Strife played Budapest in Hungary, we go to the venue and, you know, you want stage water, and they didn't have flat water for the stage. That all you could get is sparkling water and warm. So
warm sparkling water,
does not quench your thirst.
No.
Sometimes when you're sweating, you want to put some water in your face; it'll burn. So it was not the best experience. But that's all you couldn't go to the store and buy a bottle of flat water. That like didn't exist.
Weird.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. But
so you just turn on the tap at like your hostel or hotel in Hungary, and it's like sparkling water coming out of it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's flat. Maybe they don't want you to drink it. Yeah. So some reason it decided to connect to my AirPods again.
Mid conversation.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're now connected. I was like, I didn't even open these things. Yeah. All right, I shut off the Bluetooth. We're good.
Okay.
But yeah, and then you know, since you are a Beverage fan, I think I told you, but War Records did put out the official Liquid Death theme song, "Murder Your Thirst" by my friends in Ways Away. We did a bass cut and a picture disc. So that's kind of cool. I see your Liquid Death in the back.
I was very jealous when a couple weeks ago when you're sending me all these photos of all your flavored stuff, and the last time I talked with Styx, he was like, "Yeah, there's not really any plans with flavored Liquid Death in Canada." I'm like,
well,
I need that shit in my life.
We'll try to smuggle some over for the show.
Yeah,
we could do
just a check bag of just Liquid Death.
Yeah, they might be able to get them to hook up the backstage. You never know.
Yeah,
I'll make some calls.
Okay,
I'll make some calls. See what I can do. I'm not like it. You know, I'm not super down with those guys, but I have friends that have friends. Might be able to make something happen for you. 5-year anniversary. Maybe. But real quick, before we move on from the beverages,
please,
if you want to know probably my top soda of all time,
I'm all ears.
I love ginger beer, spicy ginger beer, best. Bundaberg.
Okay.
Bundaberg ginger beer. It's from Australia, made with cane sugar. Best ginger beer you can get. Top soda of all time. And they have other they make like a root beer. They make like all different flavors of sodas. And so if I do drink a soda, which is very rare, that would be it.
Interesting. All right. Well, we do have some Australian listeners. So if they're drinking one of those right now,
get it. Yeah, you could find it. You can find it here now. Like I found it in Australia. And then for years you couldn't get it here. And then there's a store in Highland Park called Galco's, which I hope you're familiar with.
Galco's.
Okay. It's a supermarket that only carries sodas.
Oh.
So if you're a beverage guy, they carry like original formula Mountain Dew that's imported from the first, that's from the first factory that made Mountain Dew or like whatever.
Wow.
They carry
okay. I'm learning lots. 8 minutes in on this podcast.
There's a famous show in LA, Schulhauser video. I think it's called Video Log. And he goes around to historic places in LA. And that's actually how I found out about Galco's originally. So at a time, that was the only place you could buy Bundaberg. Now, I think maybe, I don't know, like a Whole Foods will have it or whatever. It's a little more widely.
Yeah, like I think to all the people that strive to be a bev aficionado, I think it's just like you start small. So you start with like, going to your local grocery stores and getting like the LaCroix. Like start there. I don't think there's any shame in that. But then you find like the local spots that will have like the super obscure energy drinks, the super obscure like yerba mate kind of things. And then you just it's a huge rabbit hole. I think it's kind of the same for hardcore. It's like you listen to like a big band and then you just it's
gotta do
Alice in Wonderland
but
style.
Yeah, look up Galco's, and next time you make a trip to LA, which are you coming? I think
yes.
in April?
Yes. There's as long as there's one in the Costa Mesa area, we should be good in there.
There's not. There's only one, and it's in Highland Park. So
maybe I need to make a very expensive Uber just to get there.
Then you got to make the trek.
Maybe it needs to go at like fly in LAX and then Galco's and then the rest of the way.
There you go.
Yeah. It was still daunting, I think, when I was there last and just before we got to link up, and I was like, just not understanding the vastness of LA and the different sectors and all that. Because like here, it's like, oh yeah, drive 30 minutes across town. It's like 30 minutes might get you like only this small distance.
It might get you 5 miles in rush hour. Yeah, I used to have a job that was 8 miles from my house, and it could take me 45 minutes to an hour to get there. 8 miles. Santa Monica, 12 miles from my house, could take 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the time of day. So you're like, oh, you want to meet up in Santa Monica? I'm like, nope.
Nope.
It's like 5 o'clock. That's not going to happen. It's going to be, an hour each way. Just, you really got to like time your drives.
Right.
If you don't want
we're getting a little out of order as far as the questions that I would ask normally. But like, what are, and maybe this is a dumb question, but like, are there like certain blackout like periods where it's like, I do not want to be on the highway at these times? Or is it like you play it day by day?
Oh, no. I mean, I would say 5 to 7 p.m. You don't want to be on the freeway. If you don't have to.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you have to, you have to. But that's like rush hour, right? In the morning, it's kind of like the same thing. I think I would say maybe like 8 to 10. Again, it's like the rush hour, and so like you're kind of cool. If you're going short distances, you're probably better off on the city streets. It's kind of like most people that live in Southern California, they know, just like unless you have to, you're going to stay off the
totally. As far as beverage, I realized as soon as I was feeling partial, I like got into it, but I haven't introed this yet. So for me, bev check wise, I'm not sure how familiar with the show you are, Andrew, but we have a couple of beverage sponsors actually. So I felt like this was a good link with like the Scope 5-year being announced. So New Level Brewing does some craft sodas as well. So they're a sponsor for the Scope 5-year, and I'm drinking their pineapple punch. So, if you're into that like pineapple juice and having a little bit of that, I definitely need some sugar. So that's what I'm going to be drinking for the episode. If you're into the sodas, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of those for you to get your hands on during that weekend.
There you go. I'll test it out. I'm more of a coffee guy, and if you caught me earlier, that would have been my bev check for sure.
Got you. All right. Well, Andrew, cheers to you, my friend. Really excited to do this podcast.
Thank you.
with the when you do the filtered water, do you have like a certain go-to filter, or are you just like, I've had this the whole time, or like have you done like the ABC testing?
Nah, I'm not like that nerdy about it. But yeah, I have a Brita filter that goes in my fridge, and then I have a filter that on my tap as well. So I find it makes, obviously filters out a bunch of crap, makes the water taste a little better.
I'm sure a lot of people are like, why is Spencer so like asking what filter game Andrew is on? It's like, I care about these things as like a beverage person. So
Brita is like the, I would say kind of like the standard filter. It's like the name brand, right?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
That's
So, Andrew, any new guests that I have here on the show? I know that you've done a multitude of podcasts yourself, but any new guests that I have on here, I'd just like to get a little bit of context about how my guests got into heavier music or got into hardcore. And I do that in a way to kind of like show that everyone's got their own unique path, but there is a lot of similarities and crossovers there. You know, despite if someone got into hardcore in the 80s or is getting into hardcore in 2022. So take us back in time and like tell me the first time that you heard hardcore and how that started to get implemented into your life. And again, you've done so many interviews, so if you want to do like the elevator pitch version or the super in-depth version, you know, whatever you want to do.
I mean, I heard punk and hardcore as a young kid. We had a friend in Santa Barbara who was a few years older than me, and Santa Barbara had a college radio station, so he would always tape the college radio. So and they would have a punk show, right? So the first punk song that I remember hearing was on a tape that he played, and it was a band called Bad Posture, and they had a song called Goddamn Motherfucking Son of a Bitch. And it was on one of the BYO comps, and I heard it. I don't know. I could have been 8 years old or something. And to us, it was just like hilarious. Like we didn't know what it was, but the guy screaming "Goddamn motherfucking son of a bitch" over and over. It's funny. So that's like the first punk song I remember hearing, and you know, it didn't turn me into a punker by any means, but I was like, that's the first song I ever recall hearing. I think my main introduction to punk and hardcore, like most people my age, was through skateboarding. Like once I started skating, which was probably like 6th grade, you get Thrasher magazine, right? And then they did a lot of great coverage of punk and hardcore bands and scene reports. And so you kind of get exposed that way. And then, you know, like one of my first music purchases was Corrosion of Conformity, Technocracy. And then, you know, from there, once you kind of identify the bands, then you would go to your local store and kind of like see what was punk. And so like, you know, the only thing that you could find, I lived in a suburb outside of LA. We're about 30 minutes north of LA. And so like you'd get, at the time we'd go to stores like Music Plus and Warehouse, which no longer exist, but you would go and they would have some punk and some hardcore, but of course it'd be the big name stuff, like stuff that had good distribution. You can get all the SST stuff, the Discord stuff. You know, it's easy to find a band like Minor Threat or DRI, even Descendants, Black Flag, like all of that stuff was pretty readily available. So that was some of the first stuff that I got into. And then going into junior high school, we kind of had like a little skate crew, right? We'd all skate to school and we'd trade tapes. And so kind of like a lot of music I was getting was from my friend's older brother. And so he would tape stuff from his older brother. And we really got into, like I said, Descendants was one. And then even more obscure, you know, not obscure, but smaller bands. Like we got really into Reagan Youth and the Freeze. Obviously everyone loved Suicidal, which, you know, they were on Caroline. That was pretty readily available. We got really into Excel, who were also on Caroline, and big in Thrasher. You know, they had full page ads in Thrasher. Circle Jerks, like, you know, all of that, you know, I'd say a little more punk, a little more crossover. DRI was huge for us. And then, you know, I had, my parents got divorced and I had a neighbor who lived next door to my dad. And he was probably maybe at least 10 years older than me. But he had a giant record collection, like thousands of records. So he found out I was into punk and he was like, oh, here, come over. You could flip through my records and borrow records. So, and he had everything, like first pressings, so Negative Approach, Necros, FUs, whatever, Minor Threat, like Agnostic Front. So I would go over there, I'd go over there, I'd pick out like 5 records at a time, take them home, dub them on cassette, bring them back, swap out. It was kind of like a music library, right? So, and he had everything. Like he had a lot of like two-tone ska. He was really into like the Specials, right? Or he had jazz records. He had a lot of punk stuff, and then he had a lot of hardcore. So like, I think there was a time where it's like I borrowed like Agnostic Front, Negative Approach, and then you could kind of see it's a little different. It's a little heavier, and then from there I got more into like going into high school, more into like the New York bands. I got really into like Youth of Today, Sick of It All, Gorilla Biscuits, and a lot of those bands were still playing. So like I started going to shows in 9th grade. I was like 14 years old. I just learned about straight edge. My first show was the Circle Jerks at the Country Club. And I had one friend in my high school that was into hardcore, and he was a year older than me. He had already gone to shows. He was friends with some people in bands. And he had an older brother and older sister that could take us to shows. So the Country Club was in Reseda. It was about, 20-minute drive for us, 30 minutes at the most drive from us. So but it was a big place,
right.
It held 800, 1,000 people. But you could go there, and we were lucky enough to see bands like Instead and Gorilla Biscuits and Judge and Infest and Chain of Strength. Like you would have these big weekend shows where there'd be 1,000 kids sold out, and we'd see punks that we'd see Circle Jerks, MDC, Neurosis, whatever. You'd go to any show, or crossover stuff. We would see Excel, or you would see these straight edge hardcore bands, and the weekend shows, there'd be 1,000 people, and then they would have these Monday night shows where it'd be like 80 people, and they weren't as well promoted. Like, oh, it's a Monday night, but those Monday night shows, like I saw it Infest on a Monday night, for 80 people, or Chain of Strength on a Monday night with Outspoken for 80 people, and it was cool. And then from there, I started Strife when I was in like 9th grade. So it's like, I met Sid, our drummer. We're going to shows. We met Rick in line at the Country Club for like a Bad Religion show. He was already in a band, but he was straight edge and his band wasn't. He's like, oh, you guys are straight edge? Well, I am too. He was from like a town over. And so like, we started building like a little crew that would go to shows. Rick was older than us. He could drive, which opened up a lot of opportunities to go further than Reseda, right? So like we started, Country Club was easy, but then there's like the next place that did shows. Like in the 90s, there wasn't really hardcore shows in Hollywood. So like if you wanted to see punk and hardcore shows, you're driving to Riverside, which from Thousand Oaks, that's like 150 miles. It could be a 3-hour drive.
Right.
And so, we're little kids sitting in traffic on a Friday night, driving to Spanky's Cafe to see whoever, every band played there. Or Santa Barbara, which was closer, opposite direction, but, like an hour north, and you're seeing a different scene of bands, because the Santa Barbara scene at that time was, it's like the Red Barn or the Anaconda, and it was a little more like PC or emo, but we're seeing great bands, Born Against or Still Life, who are our friends. We'd see them all the time, or Downcast, who were awesome. Like, so we were into everything. We were into the straight edge hardcore bands. We were into the PC bands. We were into the emo bands. We were into the, crossover type bands. At that time, if you were into heavy music, it wasn't like you were just like, oh, I'm only into this. You're like, no, I like this. I also like this,
and
and you go to every show,
Yeah.
And it was very cool because you could see a band like Strife playing with Downcast, Struggle, and Still Life, and it made sense. Or you see Strife playing with Lifetime and Mouthpiece, and of course it makes sense. Or later on we would play with metal bands, like what I mean. And that's kind of the way our band grew, and kind of the way our scene grew.
Yeah, no, there's so much to unpack there, but I think just to go off exactly how you were kind of ending, it's really cool to hear that, like, quote unquote mixed bill shows aren't like a 2000s idea. There's that has always been in the mix, and maybe it's just been the idea of like bands from multiple subgenres, because like the spider web has grown so much. It's still, you can have a band like Terror doing a collaboration with the singer of Cannibal Corpse, and it's embraced, versus like, the scene is only this big, and it's like, oh, this band's Youth Crew, and then this band's more like melodic, but they can still play together, and that's embraced as a mixed bill thing. I think it's grown, and then people have been more open to really give something on the total opposite side of the coin the same love and attention.
Yeah, and so I've said these examples before, but these are like real life examples. Like, okay, we played Ventura with Pennywise. It was Pennywise at Ventura Fairgrounds is a huge show. It was Ventura Fairgrounds is Pennywise, Joy Killer, and Strife. We played, and I heard on a podcast, Todd Jones was in that crowd. He's from Ventura, and Strife was like, he went to see Pennywise. Strife was the first hardcore band he saw. You know what I mean? Like, unintentional. And it's like, to see somebody, he's probably 14, 15 years old, and to see that effect. I'm not saying he got into hardcore because of us, but that was his first exposure. And then he goes on from Carry On to Terror to Nails and every band in between. And he's, a hardcore staple for the last 20 years, right? That's why you play these mixed bills, to grab out, one kid, two kids, three kids. Another example was like, we played an awesome show in San Bernardino, and it was Descendants, Guttermouth, Handsome, and Strife. Big Brian from Zabalba was in the crowd, probably to see Descendants or Guttermouth. See Strife, goes on to start Zabalba, right? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's why you play these shows. And that's the only way a scene's going to grow. Like and that was like really a huge part of Strife's success, was like, we would tour with bands like Voodoo Glow Skulls. Like, that sounds weird, but those guys were all into hardcore. They had a venue, a record store and a venue. They would do shows. Like, Strife played, they would come to see us. Sigmadal played, they would come to see us. So like, to us, it was like, oh, these are our homies. Eddie, Voodoo Glow Skulls, cool, we're going to play. And it's like, we won some of their fans. They won some of our fans. We play with, we played shows with Dance Hall Crashers and Aquabats. Like, we played with Aquabats. Travis Barker was still playing with them. Like, and yeah, it's weird, but in our eyes, it's just like, that's cool. If we can win some kids over, we're going to do that. And, we did a tour with Incubus. We did a huge one for us. We did a European tour with Sepultura on the Roots tour, right? And I still have kids to this day that come to our shows in Europe. They're like, first hardcore band I ever saw was Strife opening for Sepultura, and now I'm a hardcore kid, and been going to shows for 25 years,
right? Because
of that, right?
Yeah.
So it's super important to reach outside of your audience. If you're trying to grow as a band, it's like you can't just play to the same 100 kids that are going to see you, because those 100 kids, they're going to get into something else, and then what? Like, right. You need to constantly be bringing new kids into the hardcore scene, and the way you're going to win them over is by playing in front of 100 people that have no idea who your band is, and fucking doing it with so much passion and conviction that you're like, they can't deny it, you
Mhm.
know, and hopefully they become a fan, you know.
Totally. And yeah, like I think you know, a tour that's coming up in the next few months here, it's Tsunami and No Pressure are doing a little quick run in the UK. And I'm like, that is such a great pairing because you get all the kids that maybe had found out about Tsunami through like the internet or like different memes. And then you have people that like adore Parker and the story so far. And it's like those worlds coming together will have incalculable like spillover on either side. And I think it's
but if you think about it, like take away Parker, No Pressure's a hardcore band. Like it's regulated.
I've been saying the same thing. I'm like,
yeah,
people are like, oh man, I love pop punk, I love No Pressure. I'm like, No Pressure's a hardcore band. I will die on that hill for sure.
But also, you know, I saw No Pressure's first show in the LA area. They played at a place called the Midnight Hour. And you know, it's, to me, they're not a band I'm gonna put on and listen to their records. It's cool. Like they're a good band. It's just not a style that I'm that into. But I was like, you know, I'm friends with the guys from Regulate. I love Midnight Hour. They're the homies. Like I was like, yo, I'm gonna go check out the show. Their show was like the coolest. The live response and reaction was everything that I wish every hardcore show would be.
Right.
And it's not. You know, it was stage dives and sing-alongs, and it was awesome. And I wish, like, that's the reaction I wish would happen at every hardcore show. But it doesn't, because, you know, you get the people karate kicking in the pit, and you have a big open hole, and you know, it's just not the right vibe. And actually, Tsunami, surprisingly, I saw them at the God's Hate record release, and they
also at the Midnight Hour.
Yep. And for as heavy of a band as they are, they did have a different response than like God's Hate. They had kids up front singing along, and it was cool. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a great pairing, and I think it's going to be huge for both bands.
Totally. So jumping back a little bit, you were saying like, yeah, like Strife did a number of different things with bands that were like, would not raise eyebrows in a oh, I don't know about that, more of like like I would never have expected that. Was there any like unlikely pairings like that either like people tried to give you grief over, like a standout specific one for you?
People would give us grief about anything, so sure. it didn't matter. Like it didn't matter. You do one thing that's a little out of the box, someone's talking shit about it. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, you know, we as a band, we did what we wanted to do, and we didn't give a fuck what anybody was going to say. Yeah. You know, it's like people would be mad if you had a guarantee. People would be mad if you had a trailer for your equipment. People would be mad. Like we had people like trying to boycott some of the shows on the tour where we filmed that video. Like, they thought it was corporate that we were filming a video, and they'd be passing out flyers about it. You know, it's just like
boycott Strife flyers.
Yeah. like I don't even know what they thought it was. I don't know what they thought it was.
Right.
But I guess like the MTV-ification of the hardcore scene. I don't know. But I remember seeing that at one of the shows. Like, you know what I mean? People will get mad about anything. So yeah, you know, if you don't like that we're playing with Voodoo Glow Skulls, don't go to the show, because you know what, we'll be back with, you know, with Mean Season and whatever, you know. Sure, I mean, you go to that show if that's more your thing, right? Like we played a lot, so it's just like for us it was more fun to do things that were a little out of the box. And you know, we always supported our friends, so it didn't matter. You are our friend, we're going to put your band on the show, and kids will learn to like it or they won't, but we're not going to take shit because, you know, you don't like this band we're playing with. It makes no difference. Like Incubus, we did a little California run with them, and they're from the town over. And, you know, they were friends of ours, and super supportive. Like, the drummer Jose wore he had a Strife shirt in a drum catalog or something. You know what I mean? Like, so it was this, it wasn't that strange for us to play. They were like, oh, we like your band and we like their band. Let's do something. And, it worked, I mean, they're huge. They're totally different band now, and huge. But at the time, like, I don't think it was strange. Hardcore kids were totally used to seeing a band like Far, who were A, label mates with Incubus, B, not too far off music wise. So why is it weird for us to play with Incubus? You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like,
yeah.
To me, it just makes sense. And again, they were our friends, so why wouldn't we play with our friends?
Right.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning a little bit earlier as far as like doing these mixed bill things, like you never know who might be in the room that turns into a hardcore kid that ends up being like a huge presence years later. And that's anything from like some of the examples that you had mentioned, but I think like I think that I've definitely established a lot within like my own scene and like different things. But I do remember like flashback to like the very first time I saw Means doing their last Canadian tour and being in the room just like mesmerized by the energy and people like climbing on top of one another. Like that was my first, like I had gone to a couple hardcore shows before, but I've talked about it on the podcast, but that was the moment I was like, this is the shit that I want to do as much as I can. So when it came, like when you're on the other side of the coin, when you like, you just do a lot of stuff, you play in a lot of bands, and then you like just by association of those things, you become someone that's looked up to, someone that people reference of like, oh, like Andrew's a real one. He's been around forever. He's doing these bands, War Records, all that. Like, how is like, was that something that you kind of like set out to be like that level of influence, or was that more of like, oh, I'm just in this position now and I'm going to carry myself this way? Like, did you anticipate getting to the level through
when
Strife and other shit?
Strife started, we just wanted to play a show.
Right.
And then once we played a show, it's like, oh, cool, we want to record a demo. Or, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to take over the world. Like, it wasn't, we never thought we would tour Europe or tour Japan or tour South America or be a band 30 years later. Like, no. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just loved hardcore. We wanted to be a part. We did that by starting bands, making zines, putting on shows, right? Like, and then from there, it's like you play music, if you love it, you're going to start other bands. So it's like start other bands, or, I think anyone who's into music, for me, I always wanted to start a record label. Like I had an idea of doing a label in the early 2000s, and it just never panned out. But we were working on signing band, like we had ideas of releases and label names and whatever, and then I think right now with the internet, everything is so much easier. It's easier to ship orders. Like everything comes to my computer. I can print it out here. I can pack it. I can drop it off. It's not like I'm getting a check in the mail and I got to count for it. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. I'm having flashbacks to when Jordan Cooper was on the podcast talking early Rev days and just like, here's this check and I have to do this. It's like, the fact that we can put up a fest lineup and then we are having orders just coming in now it's the game is totally different from that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think I did it at the right time, but it's funny. It's like, I've done a lot for hardcore and I do it because I love it. I do the label because I want to support bands that I think are cool. Mm-hmm. And, I want to use my years of experience to help these bands and shine a light on a band that I think has potential to do something. Right. So it's like, it's my way of giving back. It's not, I don't do it for like scene cred or for people to think I'm cool. And it's like, I've got Berthold City, and we still got to grind. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, we want to play. It's like, fuck, I'll book our own shows. I don't care. Like, right. It's like some of the people, I guess, maybe don't think we're cool enough. Doesn't matter what we did in the past. We're not cool enough to be on their show. So fuck it. Just like I did when I was 14, I'll book my own shows.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I have my own network. I got friends. I know bands. I'll do it myself.
Right.
Like, and that's like, you can't rely on anybody if you want to be successful. It's like, if there's no shows in your town and you want shows, book a show, start a band. And once you start doing that, the scene will grow. There'll be kids from high school coming, and bands will, one out of town band will come there and be like, oh, I had a great show in so-and-so. And like, oh, really? Oh, cool. We want to go there. And then people are going to start asking you to play.
Right.
But you got to put in the work. And that's the same with anything. You want to do a podcast. It probably took, probably when you started, it was hard to get guests and hard to get momentum and people to listen. Now it's like, now it's part of your workflow. Now it's much easier.
Yeah.
Same thing with a band. It's like, you got to play, you got to make good songs, and if you can't get on shows, book your own show.
Right.
Book your own tours. Like there's people that will have you, but you can't sit around and wait for your phone to ring.
Totally. Yeah. So definitely want to hit on War Records, but I think one of the things that I wanted to dig a little deeper on is the ultimate why for you, because you're like you're playing in these bands because you love hardcore. You started this record label because you love hardcore. Like, I think this is more of a personal thing for me, but I'm very much the same way, where it wasn't enough for me just to play in a band. I was craving that extra thing, whether it was, and at the time I didn't know what it was, and it was like, well, I know how to use a camera. No one is filming shows in my scene the way that I would like to see them. Hey56 obviously being a big influence for me at the time. And then I just started. And then that has just blossomed into all this thing. And everything that I've done and added to the scoped universe has been just because I want to do it, not like this calculated, like, I'm going to do this, and then that's going to lead me to this thing. So has that, how do you manage your level of quote unquote ambition or drive to do things in hardcore, and having that be misconstrued by people thinking there's another agenda at play? Does that question make sense?
It does make sense. I think I do things because I love it, but you got to do them because it's fun. Right. Because you want to do it. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going to start a record label and I'm going to take over the world and I'm going to make so much money, like, it's not going to happen. Like, right. You need to be realistic. There's a lot of work that goes into running a record label. It's very expensive to make records. It's very expensive to promote a band properly. It's very time consuming. So you got to do it because you want to do it. You got to do it because you love it. And hopefully it grows, hopefully it grows and it gets to a place where, you can make a profit, or you can afford to whatever, support your bands in some way. And I think if you're going to play, for anyone who wants to play in a band or do a record label, do it for the right reasons. Do it because you love it. And, it's not my job. It's not my full-time job, so that allows me to be for the Berthold City record, the LP, it was our first LP. And I was like, you know what? I haven't done a gatefold album for a record before. That might be cool. Is it more expensive? Hell yeah, it is. It's like an extra $1.20 a record to make. Plus it weighs more, takes up more boxes. So you're shipping the records here. It costs more in shipping.
Right.
But it looks fucking cool. And you know what? I'm never going to get a chance to make a first Berthold City record. So again, it was a weird way of thinking, but like the first Strife LP, again, it was gatefold, and it was like an idea. We always thought gatefolds were cool. It's like, oh, we want to do a gatefold. People were pissed. That was another thing. People talk shit because we had a gatefold record. Like, what? But people were mad. But I kind of wanted to carry that kind of that tradition, and it's like, okay, the first Berthold City, we're gonna have a gatefold, and if it's more expensive, I'll pay it. If nobody buys the record, whatever. I lost lost another $1,200. What are you gonna do? Thankfully, people bought the record, and the layout looks amazing, so it's cool. Mm-hmm. And I think for the people who buy, that's the thing. The pool of people who buy records is continually getting smaller and smaller. So you got to put out a cool product that when people buy that record, and some people, Europe, for instance, they're paying $20 for a record. They're paying $23.50 for shipping. They're paying almost $50 for a record. When they open that record, you want them to be like, yo, this was worth it. It might have been $50, but this layout's insane. The vinyl looks insane. 2 of my last releases came with like a giant, like a 24 by 36 poster inside. Like, so I will go out of the way to make a product that I think people are going to be stoked on when they open it. And that's rewarding. It's rewarding when people want to take a picture of a record because they think it looks so cool and post it on the internet. Like, wow, this record came in. It sounds awesome. Look how cool it looks. Like, right. And they're hyped up. And I think so it's okay, in my opinion, to go that extra mile. But
I was just going to ask, does that come from like a place of like you got a certain record one time and that like prompted you of like, oh, there's an experience with like getting this thing, and like nothing is worse than someone literally on the other side of the world who probably paid upwards of almost like 3 digits potentially for a record, and they open it and they feel disappointed. The music might be sick, but just the presentation was off. Was there any specific record that you opened and you were just wowed by?
I mean, like all of the early records I bought, all the early Revelation stuff, like my Judge record came with a big poster too. It's like, which, now you see that poster on eBay, it's whatever, $300. Right. But, to like open a record, like there was a time you would buy a record and you would sit there and obsess over it. You look at the pictures, you read the back cover, you pull out the lyric sheet, and you would really sit with a record maybe for weeks until you bought the next one. Right. Whereas now it's like, oh, people are going to put on Spotify. Oh, I'll skip through a couple songs. Oh, it's cool. And then they're on to whatever else. So I think music over the years, like the way people consume music it's changed. So yeah, I do like to add those extra details where, I think there's a lot of people that buy records that don't even listen to them, which is fine. They're collectors. So if you're a collector, make it a collectible, make it an art piece, right? Like include some extra stuff. Like, I did a lot of my early releases were one-sided 12 inches, and we would do versions with silkscreen B-sides and different colors. And then during the pandemic, I did a series of like silkscreen lathe cut 7 inches, really limited stuff. And it's like, I try to do cool products that kind of reward the collector. Like if you're a fan of my label, I've been doing a series of the War Records press. There's only 100, and it's glow in the dark vinyl. We have a Japanese OB strip on them. They're a little more expensive, obviously, to make. Glow in the dark vinyl is more expensive. The OB strip's expensive. I need a designer in Japan to do it. Whatever. More expensive to buy. But when I have a new release, that'll sell out. The glow in the dark sells out in, sometimes minutes. Right. It'll be like, oh, it's up, it's gone. And then there's, for the collectors, they're going to want to get on my mailing list or whatever. So it's like, oh, I need that glow in the dark. I need that glow in the, and that's really fun. And it's, in a way, it's like branding my label in a way, like, oh, of course, I've been doing this cool glow in the dark vinyl, like, and I did that for the Terror Trapped in the World. I think that was the first one I did it on. I did it for the California Takeover. I did it for Enforced and Berthold City. So I have like a little series of that so far. And it's just like, it's fun. And I think a lot of that collector mentality, obviously record labels have been doing it forever. And then, kids get into whatever. I used to collect garbage pail kids as a kid, you know what I mean? And so it's just like, people want to have the rare version, and that's fun.
What's the rare version of a garbage pail?
Oh, there's a bunch.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a bunch, like, so every garbage pail kid would have like two names. So like
2 brands. Okay. Got you.
So it would be the same artwork with 2 different names.
Oh, okay.
So you'd have 2, one's more rare, but then the super rare ones, there'd be 3. Same artwork. So it'd be like Flat Pat and Smash Sammy or whatever it was. It'd come out with these same names.
Right.
And so like, obviously for like that, like the first series was the rarest. And then you could take like the backs of the garbage pail kids and make like a puzzle.
Right.
So you'd have to have those specific ones to make the puzzle. But I think kids were collecting Pokemon or whatever it is, or baseball cards or comic books. Right. So the same thing, or records. So I think, for me, it was important to make a record that sounds good, looks good, and try to promote it the best that I can, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's the 2 things that I want to break down. Well, like, I guess reiterate is the valuable inside of just like thinking about how because I think a lot of bands are, getting opportunities where they can do 12 inches, or maybe they're not on the label, but they still want to do that. Like that's a milestone for me for sure. But like thinking about like, that's an experience versus just like, it's not just like on one side, it's this color. And then the other, when you open up, it's the other color. It's like thinking about the artwork and how you could add like surprise and delight with some of those other things, like tossing in a poster or other things. But going back even a little bit further, like the whole why is like not to make money, not to, have scene cred. It's like, is it fun? Is it bringing you personal like excitement and joy based off of like getting to do some of like the intricate things that you're doing with the label? Like it might cost more money, but like the fact that you're like, oh, this is super cool that I'm doing this. And I think that's the same for me. Like doing this podcast, filming shows all around the world, it takes a lot of time and energy, and there's a lot of sacrifices that I've made, but it's been so fun to be able to see certain bands in a certain time frame, and they're like, if they're just on the come up, if they're at that like sweet spot where everyone's talking about them, or it's like, sometimes filming bands where it's like their last show potentially, and they don't even know it as well. So I think being able to like, whatever you do in this space, whether it's filming bands, doing a label, booking shows, like if you're not having fun about it, like there's some things behind the scenes that need to get tweaked, versus like feeling stuck or like you have to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And then 2 other things that I will touch on. So it's like for the label, in a way, it's my way of giving back. Like I'm going to support some young kids band and use all of the knowledge that I've gained over the years in the hardcore and do my best by them to help make them successful. Right. So that's my way of giving back. Like, hey, I've done this. This is what I think you should do. This is what I think is going to benefit you the most, and I'm going to help you guys. Right. Now, as far as playing in bands, there's 2 things. One, it's got to be fun. Like we got to do it because it's fun. Like we only do Strife now because it's fun. Like it gives us, you know, those are my oldest friends, gives us a chance to hang out, have fun together, travel together, and still make music that people care about. It's great. As far as a new band, you know, I've done World Be Free in the past few years, Berthold City. It's got to be fun, but it's got to be fucking good. Like there's no reason if you're trying to play in a band, there's no reason to do it if you're going to half-ass it, because nobody's going to care. So I try to make all of my current bands as good or better than my past bands.
Okay.
I want people to hear the new Berthold City record and go, holy shit, that's a fucking great record. Not like, oh, why is this washed up dude trying to do hardcore? Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're gonna do it, you got to make it undeniably good. You got to put a lot of effort and a lot of time to make sure that it's great. Because otherwise, why should anybody care?
Right. Yeah. And not thinking of like, I hit my ceiling with Strife, and that's the max that I can do for any other side project thing that I start. It's like, I'm actually going to go even further than that and really be able to like, showcase these other like skills or ways that I can do things. Yeah, I think that's great to not be like, oh, I did my time. I put in the work and the grind and all that. And it's like, not even from just like the practical standpoint, but from the passion and the execution of, you know, doing different things, which is awesome. You mentioned a little bit earlier too, and maybe we can touch on this, is like, you know, Strife, huge band, and then you're doing you're playing in World Be Free as well. So World Be Free, Berthold City, like you were saying, like, oh yeah, like we'll just do our own shit like we did back in the day. So like for someone who's in a huge recognizable name of a band, and then, you know, being in these other projects that are like, I think naturally there's like a bit of, you know, when someone goes to start a new band, there's like a reference point of like, oh, if they were in this, there's, you know, I'm definitely going to give this more of a chance versus if it's just a random name and I don't know any of the members. But how has that been when it comes to like, you know, like starting to build another thing from ground zero, so to speak?
Again, you got to go into it with no expectations. You got to go into it doing it because you love it. Like, and that's the thing. It's like Strife is fortunate enough that at this point in time, we still have kids that like our band, that still care, that still want to hear those songs. We're very fucking fortunate. But why should anyone care about what the guy from Strife's new band is like? You know what I mean? Like they shouldn't, you know, unless it's fucking good.
Right. Unless it's good. Unless it's good. So make it as good as you can and go out there and bust your ass and play as many shows as you can and put out the best quality records you can. And you got to put in the work. Like, you know, Strife is easy. People come to us like, oh, we want you to play this fest in Canada. Do you want to do it? Okay, that sounds fun. You guys want to do it? Then we'll do it. Like, was it that easy?
Yeah. You know, like we're playing, Terror has some record release shows in California coming up in April. And Scott hit me up, hey, does Strife want to play this, you know, on this date? Hey guys, you guys want to play this? Terror? Fuck yeah, we'll be there.
Right.
Like, you know, and that was like that Terror show. I told Scott, I was like, yeah, that's the quickest show my guys have ever confirmed. Like, let me check, let me do this. And right. Hey, you guys want to do this? It's like, I got the answer that same day. I'm like, yep, we're in. Let's go. Like Berthold City, I'm like, you know, we got a new record out. People like it, but it's still like we're trying to book shows, and it's like it's hard. You know, you gotta put in some work, gotta call in some favors, and you gotta, you know, go out there and bust your ass to promote it. You know.
Yeah. So I think, you know, an example in maybe my my generation is like seeing how Knocked Loose has really blown up as a band, and then Isaac to go start Inclination, and then that the product is so good as well, and then that has exploded. And then it's always funny to see the different projects that he would just like, I'm doing guitar in this band. And what's cool is that it's always been like, I'm doing a slightly different thing, because I can scratch this itch with Knock Loose, but I also want to do stuff that's that can be on a local level. It doesn't need to be at the same level of my main bands. It could just be like, we don't have to play to 800 kids. We can play to 80 kids. But yeah, when he starts like Weapon X, and it's just like, obviously there's a lot of people that are going to check it out because he's got connections and, people that look up to him as an artist. But it's dope that band can like have a little bit of a springboard. But to your point, it needs to be good, and you still need to, things won't be handed to you. There might be more like chances that are given because it's like friends and all these things.
Here's the difference. Isaac's in, the biggest current hardcore band, or top 5 biggest current hardcore bands, and he's doing another band concurrently.
Mm-hmm.
It's much different than somebody who is in a very big band in the 90s doing something in 2022.
Gotcha.
There's a big difference. Of course, every promoter or band, they're going to put Isaac's new band on a show,
sure, because
they want that Knock Loose favor, or they like Isaac, or whatever it is, right? You know what I mean? It's a much different thing. And I'm sure much easier for him at this point.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But again,
no, that's a good point. Yeah. To have it where it's like, it's not like there was a gap of time where you weren't in hardcore and then you've come back and done that. It's just like more of like, context wise, it's different. So that's a good point for sure.
Yeah. But, to Knock Loose's credit, like I saw them years ago. They played a small place, White Oak Music Hall here. And, they busted their ass. They got out there and they toured, and they were touring at a time when a lot of other hardcore bands weren't hitting the road like that. Bigger bands were like, oh, I'm flying out to the West Coast for a weekend, or flying out to the East Coast for a weekend. Like, nope, we're doing tour after tour after tour. And they built up a fan base, and, they deserve it,
mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, let's go back. We've mentioned the new Berthold City record. So talk to me about that. Like, first off, sounds great. I'm a big fan of the color compliments with the teal and the orange. Orange is my favorite color, and like teal has always been like that blue and orange kind of combo. Super nice. But yeah, like talk to me about how that record came to be, and like again, what we were saying earlier of like, this might be a new project, but I'm still going to put in 110% into this next thing. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I started Berthold City, I think probably like 2017. And basically I was writing songs that didn't really fit for Strife. They didn't really fit for Will Be Free. And I was like, I hit up our drummer, Adam. I was like, hey, let's record these songs and just see what happens.
Right.
So we recorded the music for the songs, kind of had an idea of different people who could maybe sing. It didn't really pan out. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. Let me try to sing and see if I can pull it off. I tried to sing in the past. Singing's hard. Super hard.
Singing is hard.
It is super hard. So I would lose my voice really easy. Voice wouldn't sound right. So I just went in the studio. My buddy Aaron Jamili, he used to be in Alpha Omega. He had a home studio. So I went there. We recorded the demo and the first 2 7-inches with him. And so I went there. I was like, hey, I want to try to sing. And, I think the key was like, don't try to sound like anybody. Sound like yourself. So I figured out my kind of screaming voice, and then I just went in there and did it. And, I definitely understood recording a lot more, and, punched in line by line or whatever, made things a lot easier.
Right.
And once I tracked the first song, I had confidence. I was like, you know what, this sounds cool. I could do it. And then, you know, we recorded the what became the demo in the first 7-inch. And then we're like, let's put together a lineup. So put together a lineup. First person I asked was my buddy Dennis. He was in internal affairs. Said, you know, got a new band, you want to play? And he said, yep. I was like, all right, we need a bass player. We need a second guitar player. He hit up John Jenkins, who became our bass player.
Mm-hmm.
John had a friend named Devin, who was in Final Fight. And Devin was our first second guitar player. Devin moved before our second 7-inch came out. He moved to, where is he? Kansas City or something. I think he's in Kansas City. So we got our buddy Ito to come in on guitar. He was actually a bass player. He was in a band called The Mistake. He played Amendment 18. Early on in Terror, he filled in on a tour. Someone I've known since the 90s. Got him on guitar. And, you know, when Berthold started, we were pretty fortunate. We got on a lot of great shows from the start. Our first show was at Program with Dare and Decline. And then, you know, pretty quickly, we were able to get on shows with like Sick of It All, Agnostic Front, Judge, Youth of Today. So we were pretty fortunate to be able to do that. And then, yeah, the last kind of shows we did before the pandemic, we did a tour with Change, Scowl, and Punitive Damage in the Pacific Northwest. And that was like a week before lockdown.
Right.
So our 7-inch had just come out at the end of 2019. Beginning of 2020, we're doing that Pacific Northwest tour. We had a couple Southern California dates as well, with Time and Pressure, that ended up getting canceled. And then lockdown happened. And once I realized it wasn't going to be over as quick, you know, I was like, oh, is this going to last a week? It's going to last 2 weeks? Like, nope. I was like, you know, let's utilize this time. We got to write a record. Right. I can't sit and wait for this to be done and then write a record. So, you know, I hit up Nick Jett, who produced the record. He plays drums in Terror. He's filled in for Berthold City on drums. He filled in on guitar. It's kind of like our 6-man. Great producer, great songwriter, very talented. So I hit him up. He has a studio, I don't know, 5 miles away from my house. So I said, hey, I want to write this record. You feel comfortable getting in a room? And, you know, and at that time, you know, he had COVID actually early on, like before lockdown. Their tour, I think they were on tour when the lockdown happened, and they ended up going home. And I think most of them got it right then. So he's like, I had it, I'm fine. You know, I don't think I'm going to get it again. Right. But my other guys, like 2 of them had young kids at home. Like, right. They're like, I'm not putting your kids at risk. Don't come. You know, same with Adam. So I just got in a room with Nick, and I was like, I've got songs that, you know, like the way I write when I'm focused on working a record, I'll leave a guitar out, and every day I was like, okay, I'm pick up my guitar, I'm writing something, and I'll just record it, write, record, not spend a lot of time on it, dissecting it. But I was like, I just need these ideas.
Yeah. Output versus like over analyzing.
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, like sometimes I'll write like one part. Sometimes it'll be 2 parts. Sometimes it'll be a whole song. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes I'll write a part, come back to it and add to it. Then, you know, then I have all these different versions, but kind of have like 20 skeletons. And I was like, Nick, let's start jamming these. So I just went to Nick's house, and we did pre-production where we would really iron out the songs and the structures, and then, you know, record pre-production demos. And then when it was time to do the record, it was just like, okay, we had all the tempos mapped out. We had the guitars, scratch guitars recorded. Adam could come in, track to those scratch guitars, and again, minimize who's in the studio at once. So it was like, we just tried to keep it as safe as we could. And then, we tracked the drums. Dave came in and did his parts, and then I played most of the guitars. And then focused on vocals. And it was just like, everyone knew like, hey, we got to get this done. Some of the people in the band might not play on the record, play their part, but it was for the greater good of getting this record written. And like, I'm going to wait till the pandemic's over and then I could come down and feel safe being in a studio with 5, it just wasn't going to work. Mm-hmm. So we came in, Adam tracked his drums in a day. We actually tracked 14 songs. There's 12 songs on the record. He tracked all his stuff in a day. Ito tracked his stuff in a day. I finished up the guitars the next day, and then spent a lot of time working on vocals. Mm-hmm. So really most of the days I would do one song a day. I'd go in there, we'd focus on what we're doing, and then track that so my voice was totally strong. And then sometimes we would record ideas or skeletons for the next song and then come back in and track it. But we probably did the vocals over maybe a 2-month period.
Wow. Okay.
But also I had to write the lyrics. So it's just like, I have lyrics. I'm coming in, Nick. He's like, cool. Go in there for an hour, go in there for 2 hours, track this. All right, cool. I'll get back to writing the next one, and I'll come back in 2 days.
Was that one of the first times that you were hearing your vocals under the mic? Like with that, like, you're doing 12 songs or 14 songs or whatever. So like, was that the first time that you heard your voice being picked apart and just like, voice crack here, let's take that again, like to that degree versus maybe you doing gang vocals on something here or there?
Well, it's interesting. So the first time I kind of realized that I could sing for a band is Strife recorded Witness a Rebirth in 2012. And I wrote a lot of those lyrics. And what we would do, we recorded with Nick, is I would record scratch vocals so that way Rick could hear the vocals and get the timing down and stuff.
Yeah. Different patterns
So I was doing that and I was actually like, this actually sounds kind of cool. I didn't expect it to sound cool. And that's where I kind of got the idea, like, I think I could probably do this. Mm-hmm. When we did when we recorded the 7 inches, we definitely spent a lot of time on the vocals as well. But for the album, when you record 12 songs, like you really got to be conscious about like repetition. Like, I think subconsciously there's certain vocal patterns you might gravitate to or song structures or whatever. So we're really conscious about like that the vocals had to be very different song by song. So Nick is really good at that. And he had a lot of great ideas. And he's a huge part of why the record came out as good as it. Sure.
What was maybe the one thing that you found most coming up a lot when it came to either like, was it like a lyric that you were writing or like, I say this thing like 4 different ways, or is it like more like enunciation that you were trying to spice up a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it was more like vocal patterns. You just want to make it interesting. You want choruses that are fucking choruses. And so like, I would sometimes come up with something that was maybe too busy. And Nick's like, no, let's strip this down and compact it and make it into more of a chorus, like lose some of these words or, ideas like that. Like, I think listening back to the records, there's now, There's a few words in there that I repeat in a few different songs. I probably could have changed that, but it's fine. I mean, I think the record kind of has a theme, and I think there are words. I'm not going to use a thesaurus to change a common word, right? Mm-hmm. I think so I think that is fine. But we really, with 12 songs, we just wanted to make it an interesting listen from start to finish. Totally. And so we didn't want 12 songs that all sounded the same. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to kind of take a listener on a journey through, our different influences and sounds. And, I think we were very successful. I really, really like, I love the way it came out.
Mm-hmm. So being a vocalist in one band and being a guitar player in some other projects as well, like, what do you think has more, like, what are the differences in keeping your stamina with different things? Because I find there's been times playing guitar where I'm like, I am actually so out of breath and I can't move around, and I just need to focus on doing that. And it's more like I'm just like really trying to keen in there. But as the vocalist, it's a totally different gambit, because you can almost not take a break. You have to be like on cloud 9, on like fucking Guitar Hero, like star power the entire time. So how, like, do you have any hacks or like different things you've learned over the years of like how to prep for that?
My hack prepping for this, which, if other people are not doing this, I suggest doing it. So before we first started playing shows in Berthold City, I knew I would lose my voice, because I used to lose my voice doing backups at Strife shows, whatever. Totally. I would lose my voice easy. So I wanted to prepare for that. We weren't a band that could practice every week or twice a week. It wasn't happening. So I would rent a rehearsal room for 1 hour, just me, bring the songs, instrumentals or the regular songs on iPod, play them at full volume and fucking scream and like run around the room like a fucking live show.
Just by yourself.
Just by myself. I still do that every now and then. I don't need to do it as much. My voice is much stronger, but early on I was like, we got a show coming up. I'm going to book 3 studio sessions. Like, there's a studio by me, like, that would let me get an hour. And I was like, I'm going to fucking sing these songs. Like, right. Coming out of pandemic, we had some shows booked. I booked the room again. I was like, I got to build this stamina. It's a lot of breathing. And plus, if you're trying to move around, and then, that helps build your voice. It helps build your stamina. And then also you kind of figure out where you need to catch a breath or a weak point. And then I'm like, yo, John, I need you to do backups right here. I need to, come in before the chorus. I need to catch a breath so the chorus is strong, or I need you to come into the chorus with me. Like, kind of figure out where you need help from another guy in the band with a mic. Yeah,
I love the idea of just like, as silly as it sounds, like you just being in a room by yourself, jumping around, like no showgoers, no one to do a mosh call to, it's just you. But honestly, like, that is, if anything, that's an actual practical way to practice that versus like, I'm just going to scream in my car on my commute, to and from work. Like, that does some good, but like, I feel like actually like forcing your body to perform like you would off of and you have a little bit of adrenaline on your side when you're at like a show because people are hyped up, sure. But like actually forcing yourself to do the same motion and give it the same level of energy in a room by yourself is that's huge. I don't know why I've never thought about doing that myself.
And it's fun. Like, every now and then, like, I'll FaceTime the band group chat, and then I'm like, hey guys, I'm practicing, and then like John will pick up his bass and Dennis will have his guitar, and they'll jam along with me. Like, I'll set up the thing and they're at home and they're jamming along to the songs, and it's kind of cool. But yeah, I would do that often. And then, it's funny. So we just had some Strife rehearsals last week, and, like you said, like, playing guitar in a band, you could get winded if you're not in shape, you know? So like, I was noticing like, we have a lot of like downhill picking. You know, I kept reminding myself because before I would like, you're playing heavy shit. I'm going full in with my right hand, just like as hard as I can. And that tires out your hand. So I was like being very conscious, like lay back on your picking, you know, like go light. And it obviously made the set so much easier. Not putting all this unnecessary, you know, energy into my picking hand. You don't need to do that. And then your guitar stays in tune better and, you know, sounds better. So that was kind of, for me, I was like, okay, lay back on the right hand. And that was cool. And, you know, Strife as a live band too, it's like, we're pretty active band. So, you know, you do got to be in shape and, you know, shows come up. It's like, you know, I'll go to the gym. I run on the elliptical, treadmill, whatever. It's like, you got to be in shape.
Yeah. But I do like that other point on the vocal side where you're like recognizing you're like, I could be as in shape as I want to, but I actually need help from some of my other guys or bandmates or whatever to be able to do that, and, you know, calling on it and being intentional. Like, I'm sure like the amount of like backup vocals that I see the rest of the guys in Terra do to like help alleviate things for Scott is that might be the same thing where it's like, yo, I need y'all to like do
it
this.
Is the same. It is the same thing. I mean, I'm in a band with Scott. He'll be like, he'll tell his band, like, sing as much as you can. Like, even with World Be Free, he's like, any parts you want to sing, please do. He's like, but these are the spots that I want you to. Like, totally. This part in this chorus, like, there's a line, there's too many words. I need you to do this. Like, before, we just did World Be Free shows last month. And before that, you know, we had a record come out at the end of 2020 with songs that we've never played live. So some of those songs is like, I need you to do this line, and, you know, need you to come in on the chorus with me, and it's fine.
It's one of my favorite things to see any live Terror videos, and, you know, someone is super amped, they're at the show and they grab the mic, and Scott out of any vocalist that I know is like, no, you do the part, and he just will hand it off and go. And what's amazing about that is that the person could be super capable and fucking kill it, or they could be like, I don't know, but he's still like, but I think what's really cool about that is he creates opportunities for people to either like rise to the occasion and fucking knock it out of the park, or it's not as sick, but like it's not detrimental to the set, which is, I think, super.
No,
super
I mean,
awesome.
end of the day, it's fun, and it's something, you know, these kids will probably remember forever, right? Like, oh, do you remember the time I came up and sang "Spit My Rage" with Terror, you know?
And some people might be like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh yeah.
Andrew, a couple other questions before we start to wrap up. I like to ask this for any guest that has a lot of discography behind them and like some really like, you know, monumental songs, because I like to kind of get it from their perspective. What to you is the most underrated Strife song, and what to you is the most overrated Strife song?
Underrated, overrated.
And, you know, again, that could be that wouldn't necessarily be like, I think this song sucks or anything like that, but it could be like, this song to me never got the love that I thought that it would deserve, or this song is a little boring to play live or whatever.
I got it underrated. I got a great one. So it's very strange, but like our first, you know, we recorded a song called "What Will Remain" on the Only the Strong comp in 1993. And then 1994, it came out on One Truth. And throughout the 90s, that was our song. That was the Strife song. You'd play it, kids would go nuts. There'd be a dog pile. We play that now, people will stare at us. They have, like, it's so strange that what was our biggest song for a long period of time, people just don't know. I don't know if it's too fast. I have no idea. But that's a song that does not get the love that it used to. And that, like I said, there was times, like, for a very long time, that would be the song with the dog piles on stage and a huge reaction.
And you felt like that song deserved that level? you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense that this is our biggest song. And now it's weird that it's
song not. Fucking put Strife on the map.
Got you.
If we didn't record that song, like, you know, like we had 7 inches on New Age and Indecision, and then we recorded that song for Victory Records comp.
Yeah.
And if we didn't do that song, we might not have been on Victory Records. You know what I mean? We might not have had the trajectory that we had. And so after that song came out, like that was kind of the highlight of the comp. Like people love that song, and anywhere we'd go to play it, like we'd go insane. Not now. Like we actually, our last rehearsal, we jammed it. Just, I was like, oh, let's see this in case anyone wants to hear something different. We're playing 2 shows. We have some California Takeover shows coming up, 1 in Buffalo and 2 in Philly.
Right.
So, the second Philly show, maybe we want to switch up the set or add something different. Like I was like, maybe pull out an old one.
Sure.
But that song, unfortunately, it doesn't get the love it used to, and that used to be our closer. Like, bring the house down. Nope, no. So I would say at this point, that's a very underrated song.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, overrated song. Like I would say, like our biggest songs are like pretty deserving. Like you know what I mean? Like, so it's, what would be an overrated Strife song? That's
because overrated doesn't need to be like it's the most popular, and I don't think it should be. I think knowing a song is properly rated as far as like what you think it had capability wise and how it was actually received.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing. Like a song like Blister, like that's one of our biggest songs. But I think that is not overrated. It's properly rated. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think that song stands out. It's got a very unique breakdown and memorable breakdown, and for the time, pretty special. And we had a video for it, and it was on compilations and video compilations, whatever. Like that makes sense to me. I don't know. So overrated is tough. It's tough. I guess I would say that'd be a song that everyone wants you to play, and you're like, oh, I don't want to play this one. I don't think we really have one like that.
Okay.
I think, I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
You're like, oh, maybe did I just sign my death wish? And everyone's in the comments like, this is the most overrated song.
This is the most overrated song. No, I mean, I think, I think we, when we play now, we play a good mix of songs from One Truth, In This Defiance, and Witness a Rebirth. There are some good songs on Anger Means that every now and then we'll play 1 or 2. The recording on that is not great, but that, there are some cool songs on that.
So I guess we'll just, I like you not answering this question fully, because then we can fast forward to when you guys are playing the Scope 5 year, and then you could be like, yo, I thought about it. This song is a little overrated, but I hope you like it.
or maybe we'll, maybe we'll see. Maybe like one of the weird songs will get the standout reaction.
Right. We'll have a little sidebar afterwards. Yeah. Well, Andrew, I got one more question before we wrap up officially, and this is a question I ask every guest at the end of the podcast. Any favorite mosh related story that you would like to end on? And that could be anything that's first to your head.
I got a good one.
Okay.
I got a good one. I was never like a big mosher. Like I always was the kid that was up front, singing along, stage diving, whatever. But as a very young kid, we booked a show. I was probably 15, maybe 16. We booked a show, one of the earliest Strife shows, and it was Outspoken, Chain of Strength, Drift Again. We were still called Stand as One, actually. It wasn't even Strife. And we booked the show at Moore Park in a little community center. And people weren't really doing, like hardcore dancing wasn't really a thing yet. And I was this goofy little kid, and I had it's so goofy. That's why. So I had a pair of overalls, and I think John from Outspoken just gave me that straight edge isn't cool anymore shirt. So I think I was wearing that.
Under the overalls.
Under the overalls.
Got you. Okay.
And then I was doing some weird fucking, it wasn't moshing, some weird fucking goofy ass dances. Cause that's what, I don't know. That's what you do when you're fucking 15 years old.
Sure.
And not really thinking much about it. And then probably the last fucking hardcore dances I may have done. And then flash forward, we're in Sweden on our first European tour, 1995. And we're hanging out with Abananda and Refused. And I think we just played a show, and we're at somebody's house, and we're talking about hardcore. And I think it's Dennis from Refused, like asking about shows. He's like, oh, there was this really cool, like, Outspoken video, but there's this goofy guy in these overalls doing these dances. I was like, that's Andrew. And I was like, fuck, that was me. So like, I got called out from Sweden about these goofy dances.
Wow.
So,
that's so funny.
Yeah. So
I had to go on the other side of the world to get my shit critiqued by someone in Sweden.
I got roasted. They didn't even know it was me. And my band,
so
they just fucking loved it. But I think I was doing like the Running Man. I don't know what the fuck I was doing. Yeah, I have no idea.
Man.
But hey, it happens to the best of us.
Right.
Not everyone could be Fubu Man.
Yeah. Shout out to Chance. Shout out to Fubu Man.
I bet you Fubu Man 10 years ago might have been doing some goofy shit.
Yeah, people in Sweden would be shaking their heads. Have you listened to...
People in Sweden might be shaking their heads at Fubu Man. But I will say, I went to a show the other day in LA, and there was a dude wearing a Fubu jersey. And I was like, you're trying to be Fubu Man.
There's like Fubu Man imposters. I've met Chance. I've met the Fubu Man. No one can replace him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know him. I just seen him. He's got a, if someone wants to dive and mosh for every band at a fest, fuck yeah, you're a hero. So I think we should petition to get Fubu Man to Scope Exposure 5-year anniversary. I'll start a GoFundMe. I got the first $20 on it.
I'm literally gonna message him afterwards and be like,
we need him.
Have you listened to his band?
I have not. I saw people posting about it. Tell me the name again.
Gagging Order.
Gagging Order.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like a band name that Fubu Man would be in. You know what I mean? Like, Gagging Order to me sounds like, I don't know, something more on the punk spectrum of things.
Yeah.
I expect Fubu Man to be in like a Gridiron or an E-Town Concrete type band.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know what Gagging Order sounds like.
Gagging Order, your hypothesis is correct. They're very punk in that space, but
yeah,
I feel like, yeah, if you didn't know, I hate that he has like blown up as like this internet person, but I'm like, his band is not getting the love from like someone like Corey, who's been in like so many Hate 5-6 viral videos, and then his band Move getting like a ton of love. So gotta plug Chance, gotta plug Gagging Order.
I did see people in the comments saying Gagging Order when those memes were posted from FYA. I did see his band name in the comments, but all it's gonna take is, maybe they need a new record.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that was the thing, is Move had a record. They had a cool record. Mm-hmm. And that's going to speak volumes. That's more than just moshing,
I'm a firm believer, and I've said this multiple times on the podcast. I think festival people should book bands that have committed, dedicated, and sick moshers in them. Literally, the second Endgame show that we played, we didn't start until our friends from Vancouver had rolled up, because I knew half of them were just insane moshers, and we had I feel like that set would have not gone the way they did if Luca wasn't in the room, cartwheeling off stage into Wolfgang, our singer. So
there you go.
It's the same thing, you know. I like the serendipity. If we talk about it on the podcast, maybe Fubu Man will make an appearance at Scope 5-year anniversary.
We're setting up a GoFundMe, and I'm chipping in.
I'll match your donation as well. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Andrew, this has been a super fun chat. Obviously, all your links for War Records, all your bands will be in the description in the show notes. But if there's anyone that you want to plug, anyone you want to shout out, anything you want to send the people off with before we wrap up.
I want to say Scope Exposure, 6-year anniversary. We're going to have Berthold City on the bill.
Bet.
Bet. Berthold City on the bill. No, I just want to say thanks for having me on the podcast. We're super excited to get back to Canada. It's been a very long time. And we're excited to play. It's a sick lineup. Tsunami, Scowl, Endgame, Change, you know, Karma, was it Ingrown? I didn't even read the fine print. I was like, posted the flyer real quick, and then I was like getting ready for this interview.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a sick lineup, and we're excited to be here. And check out the Berthold City record if you haven't already. Check out War Records. We got a lot of great bands. New releases coming up from Enact, new record from Bent Blue. We've got a new record from Fixation. Got a record from a young kids, straight edge kids from San Diego called Abstain. Got a lot of stuff in the works. So yeah, definitely check out all the bands, check out the label, and see you in Canada.
Yeah. Andrew, I'm super humbled by all the time that you've given me and the fact that we get to shoot the shit and the fact that you guys are coming up to Canada is like a dream come true and like something I'm like very much looking forward to. And like Andrew said, Scope 5-year anniversary in Calgary, August 26th and 27th, featuring Strife, Scowl, Tsunami, and a ton of other amazing homies and great bands. As far as the time of recording this, weekend passes are available, but you know, depending on when this come out, I haven't checked my phone in an hour, so I don't know the response, but hopefully you can still snag something and make a trip up if
weekend pass. Got to do it.
Just do it.
Can I shout out my favorite Canadian real quick?
Absolutely.
The legendary Eric Hoyback.
Okay. Shout out to Eric.
There you go. Do you know Eric?
I don't.
What?
Wait, how would I know Eric?
How wouldn't you know Eric?
Okay.
Maybe you're too young to know Eric. He's a legend.
Where is he from? Calgary?
No. He's I believe he's from Toronto.
Okay.
And a bit older than you.
Well, but Eric, if you're listening, maybe you should come. Sorry if not knowing you, but you should come to the fight.
Eric. Let's petition to get Eric to the Scoped Exposure 5-year anniversary as well.
Andrew has 10 tabs open with all the people that he wants at the fest. The first two are Fubu Man and Eric.
Eric Hoyback. Aram knows Hoyback. Guaranteed.
Okay. Yeah, so hopefully...
You might know him. I wouldn't be surprised if Hoyback becomes a guest on Aram's podcast.
Okay, well...
Hardcore kid turned, I believe, school bus driver turned lawyer.
Okay, well, now this is just becoming work for me where I'm like, okay, now I should put in the inquiry.
There you go. Hoyback.
Amazing. Thank you again, Andrew, for coming on. I definitely want to do this again when we're in season 3. And thanks again for coming on the podcast. Really stoked to see you in August.
Thanks for having me, bud.